Hi, welcome to another Atkins Diet video by Ken Halpern. Today's episode is the second in the series in which I deal with some of the Atkins Diet misconceptions in the community at large, as well as within the low-carb community itself. I've received many comments within my videos saying Atkins Diet is a high-protein diet. And the actual answer is no, it is not a high-protein diet. It's a moderate protein diet and a high-fat diet. And just browsing the web, if you Google high protein and Atkins diet, you'll receive many hits. And some are like from Ann Collins. The Atkins diet is a high protein weight loss diet which emphasizes the benefits of high protein foods and the dangers of carbohydrates. WebMD says high protein, low carbohydrate diets have been widely promoted in the recent years as an effective approach to losing weight. These diets generally recommend dieters receive 30 to 50% of their total calories per day from protein. By comparison, the American Heart Association, the National Cholesterol Education Program, and the American Cancer Society all recommend a diet in which a smaller percentage, although it's unspecified according to WebMD, are derived from protein, nutrients essentials to the building, maintenance, and repair of tissues in the body. The Atkins diet is an example of the high protein, low carbohydrate diet. Well, let's get into what does the USDA recommend for protein intake. What defines a high protein diet according to the USDA? And according to the USDA, protein-rich foods should take up from about 10% to 35% of your calories. Smart protein choices include lean fish, lean meat, and poultry, along with eggs, legumes, nuts, and seeds. 2005 USDA guidelines said, while protein is an important macronutrient in the diet, most Americans are already consuming enough, and that's defined by 10 to 35% of calories, and do not need to increase their intake. So, in reading the USDA guidelines, a high protein diet defined by me would be anything over 35%. Okay, well, taking that, what does that mean in terms, what does the Atkins diet recommend for protein intake? And from Atkins himself, he said, the macronutrient breakdown during the induction phase should be about 60 to 65% fat, 30% protein, and 10% carbohydrates. To be more appropriate labeled a high fat regimen, and as you progress through the phases, your percentages of fat naturally diminishes as your percentage of carbohydrate increases. So that entails that the protein level throughout the diet would stay approximately 30% of your daily caloric intake, well within the USDA recommended standards. Within the New Diet Revolution book, there's this phrase, can I manage my insulin and blood sugar without eating as much fat? And his answer was no, because when you cut out the fat, what is left is protein and carbohydrates, both of which can produce a blood sugar response. Fat is the only substance that won't have an impact on your blood sugars. It also provides essential fatty acids that you cannot get from either protein or carbohydrates, which are necessary, incidentally, for the fat-soluble vitamins. Contrary to much of what you have heard, fat can actually be good for your health. That's found on page 43. But what about a low-fat, low-carb, high-protein diet? Is there any negatives to that other than the ones that I just mentioned coming from the New Diet Revolutions book? And there was two noted by both Dr. Stephen Phinney and the Canadian explorer Stephenson. And I'll provide two links in the show notes. One of them happens to be rabbit starvation. Rabbit starvation, and for this I get to satisfy my desire to put one of my caged friends in front of the video. This is Matt's. And why do I have him? What is rabbit starvation? Well, rabbit starvation was noted by this Canadian Arctic explorer. From the normal Arctic Inuit diet would feature large amounts of blubber, large amounts of caribou fat, within their diet. But what would happen when the caribou herds would move on and they were forced to eat from some of the leaner proteins of the environment? They didn't have the carbohydrate intake that most people do, so most of their intake was typically from during this period would be the lean protein rabbits, and starvation called rabbit starvation, and it's a form of malnutrition caused by the excess or consumption of any lean protein, i.e. the rabbits, coupled with a lack of other sources for nutrients in combination with other stressors, such as a cold or a very dry environment. The symptoms of this rabbit starvation would be diarrhea, headaches, lassitude, which is a general fatigue feeling, and a vague discomfort or hunger that can only be satisfied with the addition of other fats or carbohydrates. So it wasn't so much a limit of a certain nutrient within the body. It was just simply that the body couldn't consume enough energy through the process of gluconeogenesis to fuel the body. In one of the links that I'll be including in, it demonstrates that the liver is only able to convert about 400 grams of protein per day into energy through this gluconeogenesis. Well, that's simply not enough for this cold environment for these Inuit people to live. The other problems with a high protein, low fat, low carb diet is that gluconeogenesis can also cause that insulin response. So for the very metabolically resistant people, they are going to have that same insulin response and be able to store the excess glycogen in their system as fat as opposed to burning it. So that brings into the final thing, is how much protein should one be eating per day. And the general recommendation, like I said, from Dr. Atkins, was about 30% of your daily nutrition should be from protein. Well, what does that convert to in the amount of grams? Or also, what does the normal sports nutritionists say that one should be eating per day? A sedentary human should eat about 0.8 grams per kilogram of weight in protein per day. Or roughly, for the 200-pound adult, roughly 72 to 109 grams per day of protein. For an active or an extremely active individual, you should eat as much as 1.6 grams of protein per day, which for that same 200-pound individual is approximately 145 grams per day. But as I've said previously, at no part of the Atkins diet was Dr. Atkins actually recommending that you eat more than the daily recommended amount that the USDA has in their guidelines. Well, that concludes another episode of How to Do Atkins Low Carb. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed seeing my rabbits for the first time up close in the video. And if you have any questions, or if you have some other myths or misconceptions that you want to deal with, put them in the video section below or in the comment section below, and we'll deal with them then. Thank you very much.